Hello, everyone. I'm John Evans. Welcome to another episode of One on One. Lenny Simpson is a Hall of Famer. In fact, Lenny Simpson is in several halls of fame for his talents on the tennis court. But Lenny Simpson will tell you that it's his work off the court that means more to him now. The role models that helped shape Lenny Simpson's game and his life read like a who's who: Althea Gibson, Arthur Ashe, Dr. Hubert Eaton, all among the best. And to think that tennis career began because of a Coca-Cola.
It was a Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
That really started my real interest in tennis at 5 years of age. I mean, Mr. Nathaniel Jackson,
Yeah.
right around the corner from my house, was a great tennis player himself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he played against the great Fred Perry
Right.
in an exhibition match and beat Fred Perry, actually. And that's one of the top British players in the entire world. Everybody knows the name Fred Perry.
Right.
But I would see him go around the corner every day. This guy dressed in a white T-shirt, white shorts, white socks, white shoes, and a racket in his hand. And he would disappear.
Yeah.
And I go, where's he going? Dressed like that every day about the same time.
Right.
And little did I know, he'd always come back, though, with a Coca-Cola in his hands. Well, that intrigued me.
Yeah.
Well, 5 years of age, anytime you can get a soda that your parents don't want you to have anyway, hey, why not?
Yeah.
So, I said, listen, Mr. Jackson, where did you get that soda from? He said, well, right around the corner at the tennis court. I said, well, how can I get some of that soda? He said, well, you have to go to the tennis court to get this Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
That's how it all kind of started.
Yeah. And so did you know at the time how prevalent Dr. Eaton was and Mr. Jackson were in just breaking through with tennis and bringing tennis into Wilmington?
I did in my own 5-year-old way because I'd heard my parents speak of them. We were friends of the family with Dr. Eaton and Celeste Eaton, his wife, anyway. We were very close with the Jacksons right around the corner. So I knew them from a family standpoint and had heard my parents talk about the tennis side and talk about more about Dr. Eaton and Mr. Jackson as men rather than specifically the tennis world.
Right. What did your parents do?
My parents were all in the education system.
Right.
My father was principal of a high school and had a contracting business. And my mother was in the school system for over 65 years. So my parents never played not one sport that I know of. One time I saw my father trying to play basketball, and I've never laughed so hard in my entire life. I mean, so I did not come from, great athletes in the family. Fortunately, certain as my mom and dad. Now, ancestors, who knows?
Yeah.
Could have.
Yeah. So you snuck around and you watched from underneath the hedges when Mom told you she didn't want you bothering the adults playing tennis, right? Is that how the story goes?
Absolutely. That is how the story goes. My dear mom. I snuck under the fence, would sneak over because I'm not supposed to be going over there bothering the adults. I can hear her, right now. And I would go over there. And every time I would go over, disobey, I got my backside taken care of very well. Well, I continued to do it and continued to do it. Even after, Mr. Jackson wanted to take me over there, but she wouldn't let me go. And every time I'd come back, and finally I said to her, well, you may as well go ahead and spank me.
Yeah.
Because I really ain't want to go over there, Mom. And so finally she realized, you know what? If you want to do this that badly, and you're willing to get your backside taken care of every time, maybe there's something to this. And we maybe need to let him just go ahead and get involved in tennis.
And when did they? I mean, you say that your family knew Dr. Eaton and Mr. Jackson, but when did they really give you the okay? Was that the okay for Lenny to begin playing tennis? Or I know Mr. Jackson started to take you to some tournaments and stuff like that, but was that really the time when your parents gave them the permission to kind of take care of you in that tennis world?
That really was the beginning of it, John, when she finally let her guard down and said, well, you know, maybe he's not bothering the adults over there. Maybe he's not in the way, because they tried to tell her that, but moms will be moms.
Right. No,
And so we all know that. Yeah. And so that was really the beginning and the green light to say, okay, you can start to learn how to play tennis, and you have my permission to go over there, and it's all right. You won't get your backside taken care of anymore. So I was glad of that.
What was the first thought you had in your mind when you saw Althea?
Wow. The first time I remember seeing Althea at 5 years of age, this towering, just bigger than life person. Mm-hmm. I mean, she was tall, lean, lanky, and just the way she carried herself, the way she came across, even to me as a 5-year-old, it was like in awe.
Right.
I mean, it was just like I was standing there going, am I really seeing this person of this kind of ability in my own little way of transferring that information and transferring what I was really watching and seeing and meeting her for the first time? Mm-hmm. It was it was like everything went in slow motion. It's like when you're an athlete, right, and you have one of those great days, and you can't miss a shot, you can't miss a serve, and you're volleying great, and the basketball hoop looks like the ocean. Yeah, you can't miss. It was like everything just went in slow motion, mm-hmm. and you were dwelling and engaged in every word, every move that she made, even to the way she walked on the tennis court. You just took everything in.
Yeah, you absorbed it. Above the tennis lessons and how she hit her forehand and backhand, you were absorbing the way she really kind of moved in life.
In life, how she just moved, how she carried herself. It was like the old E.F. Hutton commercials. Yeah. I don't know whether you're old enough, John, to remember those,
Hutton
right?
Talks, people listen. Yeah.
People listen. Yeah. That's the kind of awe. When Althea Gibson said something, when Dr. Hubert Eaton said something, when Mr. Nathaniel Jackson said something, you listened well and you just absorbed it with every fiber that you had.
And so many people that I've talked to, you know, when they say Kim Munley, when she was in here, and some of the others, and when you say, when you're going through what you go through, do you realize how good you had it at that point in time, or did you realize 20 or 30 years later the people who helped shape your life at the age of 5?
You know, I learned that and realized that early in my life. Yeah.
Wow, what a blessing that was.
I really did. By the time I was 9, I realized the sacrifices that my mom and dad were making for me and my sister in order for me to be able to play tennis and to have that privilege to go over to that court, because I was always the youngest there. Mm-hmm. I was always around older guys, older people, adults. Yeah. So, you know, I just took everything kind of in, and I just sat back and watched how and what they were doing. And I tried to, obviously, as a young kid, being so impressionable and 5 years and 6 years of age, I wanted to do it the same way that they did. So I watched everything very carefully and realized, wait a minute, there are no more 5, 6-year-olds out here. They're all 11, 12, 15, 18, adults. I'm the only really young person. There's no one else here of my age.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm doing something in my own way that no other 5, 6, 7-year-old is having the opportunity to do. So I kind of put it into perspective that way at an early age. So by the time I was 9 and got a chance to go to my first tournament at 8, I really began to put things into perspective, how blessed I really was.
Was that when you went to the American Tennis Association events at the age of 8, did you comprehend the fact that the ATA was one group and the Lawn Tennis Association was another? Did any of the racial binds start to come into play at that point in time, or was that later in life?
No, the racial binds were already there. And the reason why they were is because of the history of Althea, the history of Dr. Hubert Eaton.
Right.
I knew what he had gone through here in Wilmington, of the things that he had to look at and the things that he had to go through to try to accomplish in life to succeed and to become the great successful medical doctor that he was, or Mr. Nathaniel Jackson, who was a mail carrier. Now, in those days when I grew up, John, around here, being a mail carrier and a person of color, that was not a job that you got every day. I mean, there were 3 types of jobs that black individuals, 4 basically. You either be a school teacher, and if you're lucky enough to be a principal, but of a black school, a minister, or doing bricklaying and carpentry work. And I mean, that was really about those 3 categories that really kind of put you and set you above the norm, unfortunately.
So Mr. Jackson was blazing trails that you're seeing in different ways then.
In different ways than I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And at the court, at that court, I was so blessed to be around so many professional role models. There was Dr. Rohn, who had a successful medical practice in town on the north end of town. Dr. Hubert Eaton, of course.
Right.
Mr. George Norman, who was the first black man to run the employment agency on Market Street. The building is still there.
Right.
The employment agency there for the whole Southeast region. Now, we're talking about in the 50s.
Right.
And that was the kind of guy that I was looking at. He knew everybody in this community.
So you really had role models just everywhere you turned.
Everywhere I turned. My parents.
Right.
I was very blessed to have 2 parents in the family. I was going to get an education no matter what.
Right.
Whether I hit a tennis ball, didn't hit a tennis ball. That was going to be a part of the deal, period. So I got it from that side. But I was around all these great role models every day at that court.
Now tell me about moving with Mr. Johnson or Dr. Johnson to Virginia. Were you scared? Do you remember?
I was scared to death when I went to my first tennis tournament in Durham, North Carolina.
Right.
Southeastern Boys Championship, ATA. My mom was not going to let me go to that tournament at all. So Althea, Dr. Eaton, and Mr. Jackson, I remember so well coming into my living room and talking to my parents. And they said, look, we think it's time for Lenward to have a chance to play in his first tournament. You know, we want to send him to this tournament for experience. Will you let him go? It'll be great for him. Mm-hmm. Well, my mom said, no, I'm sorry. My dad wanted me to go.
Right.
My mom said, no, he's not going to that tournament.
Yeah.
And he's certainly not going by himself. So I whined and complained and, argued or whatever my so-called argument skills were at that time. Obviously, I had a smart mouth on me. So my mom finally said to them, okay, look, the only way I will let him go to that tournament is if I can take him. They said, okay, great.
Okay.
So my mom took two other kids from Wilmington, Leonard Hawes, who was my doubles
I was
partner.
going to say, I was going to talk about him later.
Yes, and Hubert Eaton Jr.
Mm-hmm.
She said, I'll be glad to take them to the tournament. I'll be there with my son to look after them, but I'm not going to let him go by himself, and that's the only way I'll agree to it. So we did. Here we are, pile in the car. Never forget, we had a 1954 Pontiac.
There you go.
That we got from Harris Pontiac downtown in Wilmington. I'll never forget. And so we packed it up and went to Durham, and boy, I got to this tournament, and I'm 8. All the other kids are old. I'm playing in the 11 and under division.
As an 8-year-old.
As an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
My doubles partner, Leonard Hawes, he was 11. Now, he'd been around and been exposed, not to tournaments, but he was older,
Mm-hmm.
so he knew how to handle competition.
Sure.
I was scared to death. I played my singles match, lost my singles match. I was upset. Oh, man, I was mad. And do you know what? That was the first time that my mom had ever seen me hit a tennis ball. Was at that tournament. And I'll never forget her in the stands, and she was crying in the stands.
Happiness?
Happiness. Bittersweet.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, began to realize, wow, I'm seeing this kid hit a tennis ball, and the talent that he may have. Did I hold him back all these years by not really letting him get into it like he really needed to? And so that was an amazing time. That was the first time that my mom had ever seen me hit a tennis ball, and Dr. Eaton's tennis court was right in our backyard.
Right.
So it was just it was an amazing thing to know. And I lost that match, and I was so angry and was crying and showed bad sportsmanship.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I've never seen somebody come out of the stands so quickly. I mean, my mom was out of that stands and grabbed me so hard by my forearm.
Mm-hmm.
In today's standards, I mean, every time you touch a kid,
right,
it would have been child abuse.
Is that what drives you then to teach the sportsmanship along with the other parts of the tennis game that you do in the One Love?
Absolutely. It stemmed from that very day.
Yeah, I can see that in your expression.
Yes.
And in the ministry that you have, is teaching the sportsmanship is as important to you as the winning is.
John, that is an excellent point. It is more important to me than the winning, the competition. That will take care of itself. It always has. Mm-hmm. It always will. Good character, that's a different ball game.
Yeah.
That has to be instilled. That has to be taught. That has to be disciplined in an individual. So that, to me, is the basis of One Love.
Yeah.
Of having that integrity, having those morals and values to these young boys and girls that we have from 6 years of age to 13 years of age. And we purposely picked that age because every house that is built, my father always said, there has to be a strong foundation.
Sure.
That's what One Love is all about. So that started right from that day.
Yeah.
She took me up to that net, grabbed me by my arm, and said, "You are going to shake this young man's hand." And I shook his hand with tears in my eyes and crying. But, buddy, she was holding me and squeezing me so hard, I had no choice but to do it.
Dr. Walter Johnson,
Yes.
he took you to tournaments around the Southeast, not just in North Carolina, right?
Actually, we went all over the country.
Yeah. And a couple of lessons that I've heard you mention was a trip to Chattanooga.
Yes.
And a trip to Kalamazoo.
Yes.
Were two lessons that I have heard you speak about and read you speak about, because they seem to be pretty pretty important lessons in your, not just your competitive, but in the lessons that you teach in your ministry and with the kids.
It is. And I'm glad to hear you use the word ministry.
Yeah.
Because this is what One Love is all about. This is the platform that we want to portray, is that this is a ministry. This is a sports ministry. We just happen to be using the tool of tennis for that ministry to let these kids know that there are more important things than hitting a fuzzy yellow tennis ball.
Right.
There are other things in life. There are your beliefs, your Christian beliefs, and where you stand with Jesus Christ. And I don't mind saying that and standing up for that for anybody at any time. That's what we're all about. That's what the One Love program is based on. It's based on biblical principles to know where you stand. It is a ministry. It is reaching out to the unfortunate. It is reaching out to the underserved young boys and girls, to give them the same opportunity that I had in life. The cards were already dealt for me, John. I mean, God had already laid out the plans for me.
He put a soda in Dr. Jackson's hair, Mr. Jackson's hand, and lured you in that way. But you're just turning it around and using it on put you on the other side of the net for these new kids.
That's all it is.
Yeah,
that's all it is. By God's guidance, His direction with this One Love program. That's why we've had such success with this program, coming back home to make a difference in this community. God is leading and directing this. Lenny Simpson couldn't have done all of this in 3 years' time, starting from zero. First of all, I didn't even want to come back here. When we left here, I said, I will never come back to Wilmington, and I put an ever on it.
And why was that?
My memories of Wilmington were not very good from a racial standpoint of the things that I had to go through as a young boy growing up here in Wilmington. And I was blessed. Listen, I have no sob stories. My parents I had two parents in the family, educated. We didn't want for anything that I can remember my sister and I growing up. My father built a 4-bedroom brick rancher, he and his grandfather, in 1948 on that property there.
Wow. At
1417 Ann Street. That property was sold to them by Dr. Hubert Eaton. So, I had a great life. But on the other side of the spectrum, I was as at risk as any other young boy and girl in this town of color because of the racial problems in the 50s and the 60s and all of that. So that's one of the reasons why I said I would never come back to Wilmington. Well, that's over. Here we are.
But those lessons that you learned in Chattanooga when you were not allowed to compete in that tournament, or the lesson you learned in Kalamazoo when you saw Arthur Ashe, being forced to play that next match 45 minutes after he finished his first one and have to do the match before everybody else. The pain and anger, because Chattanooga was an anger for you. That kind of pain and anger really, do you think that all shaped into coming back here and making sure maybe another child doesn't have to have that same pain and anger that you felt?
Absolutely. That is a tremendous observation. There's no doubt. I would never want any other young boy or girl, whether they're green, blue, white, or yellow, to go through some of the same things that we all had to do and go through trying to break some of the barriers of the USLTA versus playing on the ATA black circuit and getting an opportunity to play on the USLTA circuit. I would never want that on any young boy or girl. So that is a part of this mechanism of coming back here and God bringing me back home. It's very simple what His plan is for me. It's very simple what my what my service to this community is, that is what I have to do, that has been put on my shoulders. And, God has led that in the plans, and here we are. And so I did not want to come back here.
Yeah.
I did not want to give up a successful lifestyle in Knoxville, Tennessee, that we worked 25 years to get my own indoor and outdoor racket club, private membership racket club. Took me 25 years to go through everything to get that. Mm-hmm. And then to turn around and say, okay, hold it, Lenny. There's something else I want you to do. I've got another dream for you. The Knoxville thing of getting your own tennis business and the owner club and all of that, that's great, Lenny, but that's your dream. Now, my dream, God's dream, is you got to go back home. It's time for you to give back. It's time for you to make a change in the community that you grew up in. And here's the opportunity.
When did that realization come upon you? Do you remember?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I remember so well. I mean, so easily to remember. When I came back here as a celebrity guest in the Azalea Festival, that's when it hit me, John. Hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm driving down Market Street. I come to 3rd Street, and I look to my right, and they're putting up the VIP podium and stands right there at the city building. Mm-hmm. And I realize there's a little boy sitting on the curb watching the Azalea Festival with my parents hustling to get down there and looking out at that Azalea Festival and clapping, and just a happy kid, to get a piece of candy, and knowing all along that the people probably didn't want us there to watch that parade because of the color of our skin. And looking at that parade and never seeing anybody in that parade looking like me. And all of that picture came back to me right as I was getting ready to turn on the 3rd Street to go by that podium. And then I realized, whoa, wait a minute. As a little boy, they didn't even want you down here. And there was nobody of color in the Azalea Festival parade that I can remember. And now in 2 days, you're going to be on the VIP podium watching the parade go by with people of color in the parade. Whoa, that's a lot to grab all of a sudden. And it hit me, and I got very emotional about it. And that's when I started those 5-6 days that I was involved in the Azalea Festival. That's when I realized then maybe it's time for me to really answer that call and to come back home and to make a difference in this community for any young boy or girl that wants to succeed in life. I don't care about the color. See, because I've seen all that mess. I don't have time for that kind of energy to be used on whether somebody is doing this or doing that, or they're not doing this and they're not doing that. I don't have that kind of time.
Yeah.
I've been through that.
So then you come here, you're here for the Azalea Festival.
Yes.
You had to go back and tell people of your plans.
Yes.
I mean, what kind of reaction did you get from family, from business partners, and everything else like that? Because I imagine if you're doing well in Knoxville,
yes.
You went to East Tennessee State,
That's
you're
right.
an All-American, you're doing all this,
Right.
You're settled in, you reach a dream, you got your own place,
That's right.
You're settled down.
That's right.
You got a family. And all of a sudden you go back to Wilmington, you come back and say, I've had enough of this.
Wow.
I bet that went over like a...
Oh, that went over like a cement block falling out of the sky. And they looked at me. I mean, I'll never forget talking to my wife about that.
Yeah, what did Joanne say?
And Joanne looked at me and she said, are you sure this is what you really want to do? We have a family here. We've raised our kids here. We've been here in Knoxville, Tennessee since 1977.
Lenny.
You got it right.
Yeah.
You know it well.
Yeah, I've gotten those same looks
You've gotten those same.
from my wife. Yes.
So you've been through
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, a change of venue, a change of thought process, all of that. She goes, listen, I will do and go wherever you want to go. She said, I just want you to be sure this is what you want to do. I said, well, Joanne, I don't know whether this is what I want to do. I am not so sure about this. These are just the feelings that I have now since I've spent this time in Wilmington at the Azalea Festival. And what I've seen, it's just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
She said, well, we're behind you, but you need to make sure. I mean, my kids thought I was absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, my kids, I'll never forget, they went, Dad, you know what? Listen, you're a good man.
Mm-hmm.
But Dad, I think you've been in the sun a little too long. That sun has finally gotten to you after all of these years. You want to go where?
Yeah. Because had they been to Wilmington at all?
Oh, yeah. We, as little babies.
Oh, they were. You come
They
back.
come back here. Yeah. We come back for all the holidays, Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And one of our traditions is every time they crossed the bridge, even when they were in the car seats, we always went to the Dairy Queen.
Oh, there you go.
First place we went before we went to my mom and dad's home. First place was the original Dairy Queen now.
Right.
On Dawson Street on the corner there where the new, I think it's a Rite Aid pharmacy.
Right there. Yeah, they
now.
moved across because they were right there across from the convenience store for years.
Correct. There used to be a Piggly Wiggly across the street.
And they moved the sign over there first. It was the original Dairy Queen sign that they had
right.
moved first.
That's correct. Well, that original Dairy Queen. And you know why we took our kids there? It's a tradition in my family.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time that I would win a tennis match or do well in tennis, we'd go to the Dairy Queen and get a cone of ice cream. Because the Dairy Queen was one of the only places that black individuals could go and get ice cream. And there were no special lines with a sign on the above, colored, white only, colored only.
Yeah.
3 windows at the Dairy Queen, and everybody picked the window that they wanted to go to. There was no different kind of ice cream for colored people, and no different kind of ice cream for white people. And that was a tradition. So my kids, to this very day, when they come in town, my grandkids,
there you go.
First place we go, the Dairy Queen.
Right over the
tradition. It's all about tradition.
When did you meet Arthur Ashe? And what was that first meeting like? Because he played such a huge role in your life. You know, Kalamazoo telling you, we're going to get through this, we're going to do this. But when did you first meet him?
I first met him at my first tournament at 8 years of age in Durham, North Carolina.
Oh, he was there?
He was there. Dr. Johnson was there with the ATA Junior Development Team, which was made up of the best black athletes that he could find, being recommended by Dr. Eaton and Dr. Johnson all across the country to expose them to the game of tennis. It's the same thing that I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
60, 70 years later. They were doing One Love tennis program a long time ago before I even thought about it.
Just calling it friendship at that time, right?
Friendship, calling it junior development.
Yeah.
But goodness gracious,
One Love rolls off the tongue a lot better.
Rolls off the tongue a lot better. That's the only difference.
So you met him in Durham, North Carolina?
I met him in Durham, North Carolina, because Arthur Ashe was on the junior development team with Dr. Johnson out of Lynchburg, Virginia.
Right.
And so when I saw this Arthur Ashe playing, and he was 6 years older than me, and I saw him playing and watched his demeanor of how he handled things, there was something so different about him as an older person. Now, I'd been around older kids, as I said,
Right.
all my life at the tennis court.
Right.
So that wasn't anything new. But it was how he carried himself opposed to the other guy that was 15, 14 years of age. Such maturity, there's a quietness about him. But yet on the tennis court, it was like the quietness before the storm. I mean, he was a fierce competitor, but never said a word. The same poker face, the same demeanor, whether he was winning 6-0 or down 4-0.
Yeah.
He just handled everything differently. And that was the first time that I'd met him. Hadn't even talked to him at that time. Dr. Johnson approached Dr. Eaton, and it was a little unbeknownst, I should say.
Sure.
It was already kind of set up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Dr. Eaton and Althea had already told Dr. Johnson about this young kid in Wilmington, North Carolina, and thinks that he has some potential and wants you to take a good look at him because we'd like for you to get him on the junior development team. Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Johnson was there and, the whole team and all of this. And so after the tournament, we got a phone call from Dr. Johnson inviting me to go up to Lynchburg, Virginia at the age of 9 to become a member of the ATA junior development team. And that's how it all started. Then Dr. Johnson was old school. Discipline, structure, everything was black or white. There were no gray areas with this man. Tough man. Mm-hmm. Tough man. And so when I got there, my mom took me up, my dad, I was homesick, scared to death again. I'm
sure.
9.
Yeah.
I'm leaving home. Are
Yeah.
you kidding me?
Sure.
And so, I got there, and so Dr. Johnson, he put older kids had to take care of younger kids. They were held accountable. Younger kid messes up, that's on you,
Right.
the older kid.
Oh,
so
responsibility at a young age.
Responsibility at a young age.
Yeah.
Because he was preparing us. See, Dr. Eaton and Dr. Johnson were preparing us for what was down the road ahead of us. All the adversities.
On and off the court.
On and off of the court. All the adversities that we were going to run into, he was preparing us for that. To be tough, how to handle it, certain way to handle it, be tough, but handle it with dignity and grace at the same time.
Talk to me about Kalamazoo,
Yes.
because that seemed to me like Arthur really exemplified that there when you really kind of, if I got this correct, you really wanted him to be, you were angry at what happened to him at that time, and he handled it like no, I'm going to handle it my way. So he really was an example of what Dr. Johnson was teaching.
He was the ideal example of what Dr. Johnson was teaching all of us. Chattanooga and Kalamazoo,
Right.
as you mentioned,
Right.
were the crossroads in my life, without a doubt. Those are the two crossroads. Those crossroads, if they had been handled the wrong way by the adult in charge, I would have had a chip on my shoulder probably the rest of my entire life, and maybe would have been very bitter, very angry all of my life. Because when Dr. Johnson put Arthur Ashe to take care of me as the youngest on the team, that's when that incredible relationship started. As he was like a father to me, like a brother to me, and I just did everything like he did. And what a role model.
Sure. Oh,
And then at Kalamazoo, Michigan, to see that happen to him.
The story was he won, and everybody else, he won his match.
That's right.
And everybody else was going to play semifinals.
Semifinals.
The next day.
The next day.
But instead they told him he had to play his match in 45 minutes.
45 minutes, and had just beaten the great Bobby Siska number one in the country, because this was the Nationals at Kalamazoo.
Right. Yeah.
Number one in the country from California. And if he had beaten Bobby Siska, then he was going to make the Junior Davis Cup team. Had a great chance to be the first African American ever to play on the Junior Davis Cup team. Well, he beat Bobby Siska, upset him. 3 hours and 45-minute match.
Yeah.
Unbearable. Sun, heat. We had to play in 45 minutes. I'm irate. I am literally, as a 13-year-old, I am just furious.
Yeah.
Here I am walking up to the score place with Arthur, and everybody's congratulating this and that. And the tournament director says, you have to play your next match in 45 minutes. Ashe, just looked at him and went, excuse me, sir? Yeah, you have to play your next semifinals match in next 45 minutes. Sir, but there's no semifinals match is not scheduled to play until tomorrow. You have to play your next match in 45 minutes. Ooh. Now, either you play or you're going to get defaulted. I'm standing there and I'm going, Ashe, say something. Yeah. Aren't you angry? This is not right. This is not fair. This shouldn't be done to you. I'm
yeah.
As a 13-year-old, I'm trying to bear the brunt of this.
And he turns around to you and says,
Lenward, come with me. I'll never forget. Lenward, come with me. I'm going, Ashe. You need to do something about this.
Yeah.
Come with me. I got to go across campus. We got to take a shower. I got to play my match in 45 minutes. Okay, we're walking across campus. I'm just furious at him. And so he didn't say a word. Not a word. I'm going,
yeah.
Why aren't you saying something? He says, here's what I want you to do. I'm going up and take a shower because I got to get myself refreshed as much as possible to play this next match. I want you to sit in this lobby. I'll never forget, Kalamazoo College, the dormitory. And remember the old wingback chairs in the dormitories and the lobbies, you know? Yeah. And my feet would barely touch the floor. He said, I want you to sit here and I want you to think about this whole situation. When I come back downstairs, I want to know what you want to do and how we need to handle this. Okay, so I'm sitting there and I'm going through this. And
stewing, I imagine.
Stewing is not the word. I wanted to tear up things in that room. He comes back down. He says, okay. He says, what is your decision on what you think I should do? I said, well, I've sat here and thought about this, and I think you should not play. You don't need to play. You don't need to go back over there. You need to complain about this, and we need to do something about this. He said, okay. You have the right to feel that way. He said, but now I'm going to tell you why we need to do this, why I need to walk back over there and play this match. He simply said, because we are opening up the doors for others that have to come behind me and us. You've got to play the 18s as a junior at Kalamazoo. By the time you're 18, hopefully all of this kind of thing will be gone. That's all he said. He said, are you ready to go with me? We walked back across campus. Obviously, he lost the match. He was playing against the great Gene Scott at that time. Lost the match. All of his friends, Charlie Passarell, Clark Grabner. I'm talking about some of the greatest players ever to play the game for the United States. They all were like close friends of his. And they couldn't believe what had happened because they knew their semifinals match was the next day.
Right.
After all of that, though, to make a long story short, he made the Junior Davis Cup team, and the rest is history. Yeah. Later on became the captain and coach of the Davis Cup team, so it all worked out.
So you think he had, it sounds to me that he had a sense A lot of people, as I said before, a lot of people when they're blazing trails or just doing what they're doing don't realize the enormity of what they did until later on. It sounds to me as if Arthur Ashe, in your mind, knew the enormity even then of what he was doing.
Even then, John, the foresight that he had and what he knew was coming in the future for African Americans and how we had to handle certain situations, he knew then and there exactly of blazing that territory. Like you said, he was very, very much aware of that. And he tried to pass that on to me in his own way, the best way that he could.
Now, you played him at Forest Hills, right?
You
played him. You won your first round.
That.
You won your first round match, and then you played him in the second round.
Yes.
You played him, you lose, and tennis, and those of us who are in the stands, even those of us who are done commentating, want to know what the players talk about when they come together in the middle. Can you remember what that 4 or 5 seconds was in the middle? Because I know he beat you, and then obviously, that's part of the history. But what did you two talk about in that grasp together at the end of that match?
Wow. I'll tell you a little funny, quick story. We were up on the tournament stands, up on the veranda at Forest Hills. Same clubhouse as this very day. Same situation. We went up to check in, and he was seated like 8th in the world at that particular time. We were supposed to have played in the stadium. They were running late. So we had to play on the grandstand court. So up on top comes Rod Laver and Ken Rosewall and Stan Smith. So they're all really good friends. So they're going, well, who do you play today? How does the draw look? And so they went, I always call him Ashe. Everybody else calls him Arthur. They said, Arthur, who do you play? He turned and went, well, I play this young man right here. I mean, he was trying to be so nice and, and they go, oh, okay. I see, well, what is your name, young fella? So I'm going, okay, right. So I'm a real threat. Yeah. All right. So we actually go out and warm up on the hard courts before we play. And he said, look, all I want you to do, this is a great moment for you. This is a great opportunity. This is just like playing in the backyard in Lynchburg, Virginia on Dr. Johnson's court. Well, he may have thought that, but I did not think that.
Yeah.
So lo and behold, we played on the grandstand courts. I was so scared. And when we were first warming up and spin the racket with the toss, who serves, this and that, and we're on the grass standing there, and he goes, now remember, Linwood, this is just like playing in the backyard in Lynchburg, Virginia. I kept saying to myself, Lynchburg. We're just practicing. Lynchburg, practicing. I was so nervous. We started off the first game, and he's trying to set me up. He's trying to get me, into the match. And I served and hit a really good serve, came to the net and volley, because I was a serving volleyer. Hit a nice volley, and he set me up a nice overhead right back just in front of the service line. I mean, I could have hit that overhead with my eyes closed normally.
Sure.
I missed the whole ball.
Oh, swing and a miss?
John.
Oh, Lord.
I've never felt
so
bad and embarrassed. I could have dug a hole in that grass and crawled in. We changed sides, and we go over, and he gets ready to go back out on the court. He leans down next to me and goes, Linwood, relax. What in the world is wrong with you? I'm going, 5,000 people is what's wrong with me. I mean, come on. I'm 15.
Yeah.
He said, just relax. So I did play a little better, but he beat me like a drum.
Right.
I mean, he wasn't going to give me anything.
I mean, but he wanted you to succeed. He really seems like he wanted you to enjoy that moment.
He did.
Yeah.
He wanted me to know the value of that moment, that this was a priceless moment in your career at 15. And it happened to be that being the youngest male at that time ever to play in the history of the U.S. Open. He wanted me to understand that moment, and I didn't understand that moment. I didn't get it.
So after the match, what does he say to you?
He says to me, well, I'm going to tell you, you got to learn and get some more experience. We're going to give you that. But he said, I'm really proud of you today, of how you handled this. You started to play better. Mm-hmm. He said, but we got a lot of work to do. And you're going to have to do that in order to play in this world of tennis.
The world of tennis.
Yes. There's a message there.
Yeah.
It's a very clear message. And I got that. And the rest is history.
Yeah. It is just, you look back at your life, and to have Arthur Ashe and to have Althea Gibson as role models on the other side of the net, you really, I can tell that's why you do what you do. Is that because you were driven by two of the best role models, not just tennis players, but role models in the world.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah.
As I said, the cards were already dealt for me.
Yeah. Now, one thing I did want to ask you, part of the Breaking the Barrier tennis exhibit at the International Tennis Hall of Fame, how important was that to you?
Wow. That was probably in the latter part of my career in the tennis world. Mm-hmm. And I've been in the tennis world a long time, right, folks.
Yeah.
I'm old. The accomplishment of helping to be a part of putting that exhibit together, research, photos, history, telling the stories.
Sure.
Is probably one of the most important things that I think I could have ever done. And that was afforded me to do. Because that is the history of black tennis from 1874 to 2017. And to be a part of that, and to be fortunate enough to be a part of that history, not only of playing, but also to help put it together, and then to see the fruits of the labor of it being at the International Tennis Hall of Fame, which there is a total void of black history, even to this very day, at the International Tennis Hall of Fame. Because that exhibit is not set up on an everyday basis at the International Tennis Hall of Fame. That is one of our goals, is to get it there permanently.
Yeah, as it should be.
As it should be. It's a total void. Black history at the International Tennis Hall of Fame has been totally left out, except for all the champions in their rooms of champions, those kinds of things.
Yeah. North Carolina Tennis Hall of Fame 2011, Greater Wilmington Sports Hall of Fame 2012, Black Tennis Hall of Fame in 2014. And you said at the time, of all the accolades, this is the one I cherish the most.
The one of Wilmington, going into the Greater Wilmington Sports Hall of Fame. Because I think when you get a chance to come back home and you have gone through the things that people don't even realize that maybe happened, and then the fruits of the labor are the respect, and you've earned that respect from your peers, from people that knew you as a little boy growing up in this town, and then to get into that group of other comrades that have been thought enough to go into any Hall of Fame, whether it's the International or whether it's the Greater Wilmington Sports Hall of Fame. That's probably, without a doubt, one of the best things that could have happened to me.
I was privileged, and I do call it a privilege, to be associated with the Sports Hall of Fame induction in 2017. And to see your face be able to accept on behalf of Hubert Eaton. There's some things that you can do when you look at somebody, but there's also some things you can do when you read somebody. I read in your mind, not only at the news conference we did that afternoon, but also at the induction ceremony that night, I read somebody that had more pride in being able to do something for someone who meant so much for them. Yeah, and I don't know if I'm phrasing that properly.
You're phrasing it exactly right.
You almost felt better doing and accepting for him than maybe you did for yourself.
I did. It was much more of a privilege to accept it for Dr. Eaton and for the represent the family, for him going in than myself, without a doubt, because of what this man had meant to African Americans in this community, had meant to me, had made me who I am to this very day, gave me the opportunity, the privilege to play on that tennis court, to be around those great role models, to set me down on that patio and talk to me about life and what I was going to be coming up against and how to handle it. That to me was that was to the mountaintop. And I'll never forget also when I had the privilege, when we went in to the Black Tennis Hall of Fame the same time, and I had the opportunity to speak and represent the family, those two moments were like highlights.
Service ace.
Service ace. Game, set, match. That's exactly correct.
Yeah, you can't do any better than that.
As far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Now, yes, would I like to be number one in the world? Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Would I have liked to have, done everything that I wanted to accomplish as a young kid growing up, and the dreams of this and the dreams of, hitting that last point at Wimbledon and winning Wimbledon? Yes. But that night on that podium was for everybody that had ever played a part in my life, that had made me who I am. And in particular, my mom, who had just passed away 2 days before that, because, see, I knew my mom would have kicked my butt if I hadn't got up on that podium and done that, not only for her, for me, and for Dr. Eaton. That was for everybody. That was to the mountaintop.
But I think, and this is just from my perspective, I think doing what you're doing for young lives, being the pioneer that you have been, being around learning lessons, teaching lessons, and doing things and touching kids now in a way that you may not know 15, 20, 25 years, some kid is going to say, Lenny Simpson said this to me on a tennis court. Don't you think in the long run of life that's better even than raising that plate at Wimbledon?
Absolutely. That is a great analogy. Some people would say raising the plate at Wimbledon. I would say for some young boy or girl out of this town to make it on the tennis circuit and to do well, not necessarily to become number one in the world, but to get a scholarship to be the first African-American player to play for Duke University or UNC or wherever, but in particular North Carolina, be the first African-American to play number one at UNCW, came out of the One Love tennis program. What a legacy.
Yeah.
I would love for that kid to stand up and say, I remember old Coach Lenny. Boy, he was a tough son of a gun. I mean, he was tough on me. He stayed on me. But boy, I look back on that, and he just wanted me to succeed in life and to be the right kind of person. And that is all about succeeding in life.
If you play tennis, you know that a good return of serve is a key to success. You get the feeling talking to Lenny Simpson that now he's returning the serve that Arthur Ashe and Althea Gibson and Dr. Hubert Eaton sent his way. Let's hope someone on the other side of the court is strong enough to keep the game going. If you want to learn more about Lenny Simpson's One Love Tennis, you can find it at one-love-tennis.org. And if you know someone who you think would be a good interview for a future episode of One on One, drop me an email, jevans@wect.com. You can also reach out on Facebook or Twitter. I'm on those social media sites every day. I'm John Evans. Thanks for joining us for this episode of One on One.